This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with a daily wrestling news update. As I've been reporting over the past week or so, NBC is going to be bringing back 4 WWE Saturday night's main event specials. Of course, those were very popular back in the 80s, and they have done periodic ones here and there since. However, Jesse Ventura hasn't been a commentator for Saturday night's main event since the 1980s. And he is going to be, according to Greg Gagne, brought back for at least one of these Saturday night main event specials. So for all you old school fans, I mean, it's pretty bad. I mean, I shouldn't say anything bad. I'll try and stay positive, but could you imagine it if the Attitude Era, if they would bring back an announcer from the 1960s in the Attitude Era? That's similar to what this is. Because Jesse, I think the last time he commentated for WWE was for the XFL in the late 90s. So it's been 25 years since he's done any type of wrestling commentary. And he does, I'm a fan of his. I think I've seen every one of his interviews. He does ramble a lot more than he used to. So it'd be interesting. I'd be interested to see it. He's one of my favorite commentators. Him and Bobby Heenan, I think, are my two favorite commentators. Vince McMahon was also good, especially him and Jesse. NXT did a 0.19 rating this week. That is expected to go up when they switch over to the CW network, which is going to be happening very soon, apparently. And for at least the first 2 shows, they're bringing in CM Punk for the Chicago one at the Rosemont Horizon and Randy Orton for the St. Louis one. So they're going to be in actual arenas, not the Performance Center studio. They're going to have some name value to them. So that should be interesting to see how they do. Dynamite only did a 0.21 rating last night, which was up, but obviously, I mean, they got a ways to go. But according to Dave Meltzer, the deal is done with. They have re-signed with Warner Brothers Discovery. It just hasn't been announced yet. So does that mean that they're going to be profitable this year? That remains to be seen. I hope for them, yes. Because they lost I think WCW's record was losing $60 million in a year. They lost $34 million last year. By the way, as much as anyone wants to bash WCW, Dave Meltzer even said in his Wrestling Observer Radio today, AEW pays a lot of people to wrestle like hardly ever. There's a lot of people in AEW sitting at home getting paid to do nothing. There's some that are only wrestling once or twice a month. In WWE, they're paying people like Omos to stay at home and do nothing. They're paying less people to stay at home and do nothing in WWE. But I also listened to his Wrestling Observer Radio today, as I mentioned, where he discussed WWE cutting back to 200 events for 2025, which, by the way, apparently that includes NXT events. So that's going to be a lot less ring time for their talent and a lot less work for their talent. But WWE just doesn't feel they're worth it to do house shows or go to those smaller markets anymore. Will that hurt them in the long run? That kids like to see the wrestlers. They like a big thing for me when I was a kid is if they'd slap your hand. It's because it's like your superheroes. If you can actually touch them, it's it puts them over beyond just a television character. So will that take away some of the intimacy, I guess, of being a wrestling fan? That they're only going to go to the big cities now. And also they're putting up ticket prices, which Meltzer also said you can get away with that in UFC because in UFC people almost let's face it, even though UFC isn't at one of its peaks in popularity right now, it's still considered a lot cooler overall than WWE. When The Rock's on WWE and all this, yeah, it's considered cool. But if you, let's say, pay $1,500 for a UFC ticket, you might brag about it. Like, hey, I paid $1,500. I got a front row UFC ticket. They're a lot more than that. But is anyone really going to be bragging to their friends about paying $5,000 for a WWE ticket? Because WWE, honestly, unless The Rock is on it, I mean, it doesn't really have the coolness factor right now. That's just the truth. Cool people do not watch WWE, and I don't mean to hate on a bunch of people, but like, yeah, it doesn't have the coolness factor. I don't know if they'll be able to get away with charging ridiculously high ticket prices. It could change. It could get cool again. One interesting thing, speaking of The Rock and Roman Reigns, neither of them made the PWI 500, where The Rock really boosted WWE ticket sales on the shows he was on, as well as ratings, and Roman Reigns boosted ticket sales and ratings on the shows he were on. But I guess they're not going by who's the most popular and who makes the most money for Wrestler of the Year. Because to me, my pick would be who's the most popular, who makes the most money. You'd have to put Roman Reigns and The Rock up there for sure. Ivan says Apollo's daughter passed away. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I used to be friends with Apollo back around 2005 in IWA Puerto Rico. I have a couple of pretty wild stories about Apollo that I'm not going to share, but they're movie-esque stories. They were that crazy. Chad McQueen just died. We'll never see him in Cobra Kai. R.I.P. Chad McQueen. I don't know who that is, but obviously, I actually haven't seen Cobra Kai. I watched the first 3 seasons, but haven't seen it since then. Have a great night. Thanks for the info, Ivan.